Thank you. Good morning, all. My name is Matt. I'm a member of Pastor Tim's other church. He asked, I've been working with him not so very long ago. I started feeling a call towards ministry and towards, I don't know, something he keeps saying seminary to me. So I've been kind of working with him and talking with him and meeting with him weekly to see if that is something that seems right for me or is something that I'd like to pursue a little further. So he's been really helpful in that. He asked me, well, half asked me and half kind of told me when he was going to be on vacation. He said, are you available this weekend? And he said, well, yeah, I think so. He said, oh, God, you'll be fine. So that was his way of asking if I could fill in for him. So I did last night here for the Vine, and then our service at St. Mark's. So that was about all. But so that being said, today's message might not be as polished and smooth as it might be. I mean, I know where I'm starting with Pastor Tim, so I have a little bit of leeway either way. So, but we'll get through this, and so forgive me, I'm new, and you can complain to Pastor Tim next week. If you want to call him, you can complain to him, or tell him this is the best sermon you've heard today. That's up to you. You decide. So.
Did he say when he's coming back?
I think he's back for next week.
Well, yeah.
Because I thought he said he's coming back Wednesday or Thursday, I think. Okay. But he said he was because he said he was just going to miss one weekend of services. So, yeah. Any visitors today? If you are visiting, thank you.
You're the visitor.
I'm the visitor. Well, thank me very much for visiting today. May God's love and grace marry my daughter and I and carry us through the week. And I hope to return someday, even though we're just filling in. So.
Today's reading is from the 18th chapter of Genesis. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread that you may refresh yourself, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of choice flour, knead it and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant, who hastened to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he said, "There in the tent." Then one said, "I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent entrance behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age. It had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I have grown old and my husband is old, shall I be fruitful?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child, now that I am old?' Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? At the time, I will return to you in due season, and Sarah will have a son." But Sarah denied, saying, "I did not laugh." for she was afraid. He said, "Yes, you did laugh." The Lord dealt with Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham gave him the name Isaac to his son, whom Sarah bore him. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Now Sarah said, "God has brought laughter to me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." And she said, "Who would ever have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." Here ends the reading.
Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. There's a lot going on in this story. A lot. And I'm just going to talk about just to kind of skim the top and some things that kind of struck out to me when I was reading it and rereading it and thinking about it and kind of stewing on it. But I encourage you to explore the story further on your own if you really want to get into it, because this really is the base or the roots of our religious beginning. Abraham kind of starts the whole show that we're about to be getting into in the beginning of Genesis here, in the beginning of the Bible. You can ask Pastor Tim for a discussion about it when you call to complain about me or to say how great I was. Again, that's up to you. But these are my thoughts, so here we go. So, verse 1, Abraham gets a visit from God. First off, that's got to be pretty crazy. I can't imagine that, getting a vision of God and seeing that. And then to look up and all of a sudden here's 3 men standing there. Well, are these 3 men, are they just travelers? Is it God himself in the form of 3 men? That's how we think of God. You know, I'm always kind of conscious of the number 3 every time it appears, you know, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So there's the 3 there. Is that at play here? I don't know. Or is it angels of the Lord or messengers of the Lord that God sent in his place? But here we just had Abraham just had a visit from God, and now these men, I don't know. Or are they just normal, average people, just men happen to be going through that God chose to work through? That is the most interesting to me, how God uses kind of everyday, ordinary, you know, down to earth, if you will, people to work through, like you and I and everybody here. Everywhere we see God at work, that's God working through us, working through you, working through someone, working through everything we do, everything we see. That's God working through, reaching out to us. The common things there are God and us. God and us kind of working together. God through us, with us, in us, and through us. God is always present, always doing what he does. It might not make sense to us all the time, but it all kind of seems to work out in the end. And then we kind of think it's coincidence where some things happen. An old pastor that I had said, I don't believe in coincidence. He said, I just think it's God remaining anonymous. So that kind of stuck with me, and I kind of like that. A neighbor told me a story of a young farmer. Kind of fits in with this whole thing here. He was on a tractor in one of his fields, kind of going along, working the soil, and all of a sudden he saw a vision appear in front of him. The letters PC were clearly visible, you know, standing right out to him right there where he could see it. And he thought, PC, what in the world? no idea what it meant. And then as he thought about it, he said, preach Christ. PC, preach Christ. So he said, okay, I'm supposed to preach Christ. He parked his tractor and went about, and he started preaching everywhere he could. Anybody that would listen. He even started a small church to preach in and spread the word. But nothing seemed to be coming out of any of the work that he was putting in. His little church was not growing. He wasn't being fed himself with the work that he was doing. So got back on his tractor, and he was driving down in another field again, and another vision appeared in front of him, and the letters PC again. He thought, oh my gosh, okay, what is this? Well, it cleared a little bit, and it said plant corn. Instead of preach Christ, it was plant corn, so there's the PC. So he thought, well, no wonder it didn't work. So plant or preach, whatever. But that story to me says, no matter what we do it as if God is working through us or using us to do. I have gifts. You have gifts of your own. We all bring something else to the table, if you will, and God works through us all individually. We may not understand it at the time. It may not be a blessing to us, or like the farmer might not feel fulfilled, but it could be a blessing that a stranger needs, or somebody that we come in contact with needs to hear at that time. Who knows? The stranger could be like the three men that appeared to Abraham. Could be God himself in the form of Jesus. Could just be three men, ordinary people, men or women. God uses us, and again, in situations that we just don't understand. Friends of ours have a son who was going through a rather hard time. He was in a bad relationship after bad relationship and moved out of the house, turned to drugs and alcohol, and just a wayward son if there ever was one. Well, he just recently came back to the family and came back to the house and didn't know what to do, and he was talking to his mom about it, and after breaking up with this girlfriend again, he was really confused. Well, why was I even there? And she said, well, maybe you weren't there for you, but maybe she needed you there. She needed to see that you have a supportive family, because she didn't have a very good background. Her family was non-existent. They were not really, but his family, our friend's family is very strong, very dedicated followers of Christ, and regular church worshipers and attenders. So maybe that's what she needed at that time, just to be kind of shown that this is another way that you bring God into your life. This is how it is. You're welcomed back, because she's never welcomed back to her own family. So that just kind of hints at the love of Jesus and how to become a follower, and how God plants those seeds. He uses us to kind of sprinkle things out there, and some might take, some might not. Like the parable of the sower. Some land on fertile ground, some land on rocky ground, some land in a swamp or wherever. I forget that offhand, but some just don't take. We're gardening yourself. You plant flowers, and some grow and some don't. It's the same thing. But I'm also a youth minister, and I try to teach the kids, what I try to do is teach them joy. Joy. Jesus, others, yourself. Joy. That's try to emphasize following Jesus and thinking of others before ourselves. If we could live our life in that order, look for Jesus, look for others, and look for ourselves, trying to live like Jesus, love our neighbors, and selflessly giving of our time and talents in support of others, much as Abraham did in this story, where he was welcoming the strangers and the three men, and he put out the food for them. Because as the culture at the time in Abraham, when he was there, that's what you did. You offered hospitality and rest to strangers or travelers as they're coming through. But the urgent way that Abraham did it here is evident. There seemed to be another kind of an urgency or a pep in his step when he was going about it. It says in verse 6, said Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. Verse 7, then it goes on, then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it, so that there's kind of a rush being built there. And then in verse 8, just after that, after all the preparations had been made, it says, while they ate, he stood near them under a tree, kind of standing back and just letting it happen in front of him. I'm thinking that that paints a picture of someone who was kind of anxious and wanting everything to be just so for these people. And again, it's Abraham welcomes the strangers with great hospitality. A sense of urgency, he makes preparations for their stay. Water to wash their feet, the finest of flour for bread, and the best of the calves. Overseeing the work himself, rather than having Sarah and the servants just take care of everything. Almost as if Abraham is wanting or needing their approval, thinking of the guests over himself. Joy. He's thinking of others, and then himself acting as Jesus, thinking of others over himself. That's joy. That's what I try to teach to the kids. And again, some take it, some don't. But all we can do is try. Of course, my daughter takes it and lives that. Exemplifies joy. She, faithlessly lives like Jesus and thinks of others and others, which she really does. And also just kind of take that welcoming of strangers and the hospitality to strangers and kind of turning it around more inward on ourselves in this context here by welcoming visitors to church with such gusto. As we know, our church numbers are just dropping and dwindling, and it's getting shorter and shorter, or smaller and smaller, I should say. In today's society or today's world, belonging and being active in a church it's not a given anymore. Years ago, that was without a question. Almost your first question to somebody was, oh, what church do you belong to? Or what church do you go to? Or I saw you at church, or, we're doing this or whatever. But that just doesn't really happen much anymore. It's worship and church activities just seem to be another activity that need to be scheduled into busy lives, and very busy lives, and it seems like church is the one that's further and further down the list. And we need to make an effort to adapt and make ourselves change a little bit to what people are looking for. How we do that, I don't know. I certainly don't have the answers. If somebody does, they're going to be a very popular person, because we need to adapt, not the other way around, because as we know, people aren't going to adapt to us, and they're not going to just bust down our doors because we put a new sign on the front or on the street, or a fancy new website or something, or whatever it might be, or talk it up. So and that kind of scares me a little, that we're losing more than we're replacing. Some churches are very good at it, others are not, and I don't know how to make that happen. Because one way is kind of that we need a little work in, is expecting newcomers to just know all of our church stuff. We have things here that, it's just one way we could maybe change. We've been coming here for years and know our way around, but pretend if you were new here and you didn't know, would you know where to go when you walked in the doors? Like myself today, I didn't know where to come in. We kind of looked. No, it wasn't there. We saw a car parked in the parking lot there. I said, oh, maybe we'll try here. But I was putting forth the effort because I knew I was coming here. I wasn't looking for just somewhere to go. Or would the bulletin explain the order of service? How somebody would follow along with the service? And what in the world is a narthex? If somebody doesn't know what a narthex is, they're not going to know. Some of our church language is kind of interesting. But I'm kind of going way off. Things that seem simple and clear to us can be very confusing to visitors. And again, we have to make ourselves adaptable and accepting to them who just might not know. If you want to get a really good indication of that, try visiting a different church. Go to a completely different denomination or a completely different side of town. Or if you really want, go to, which you have some experience here. You said don't use this Bible because it's in a different language. Go to a non-English speaking church where you don't know anybody and see if you could just walk in and see. That'll give you a little indication of some of the barriers that unknowingly we're still putting out there that I think we really need to work on as we're called to be disciples of the Lord. To spread the news of Jesus, we need to make that as easy for people to hear that and to get our story than, I don't know. And that can be done by welcoming those we don't know, by inviting them to church. The simple act of just greeting someone with a friendly smile or an introduction could go, a really, really long ways. And sometimes that's all that's needed for somebody to open up. If they see a friendly face, maybe they'll start talking, and then, you could, why don't you invite them to church? Why don't you come and worship with us this Sunday? Could be that easy. And just imagine how that simple act would be magnified if we all did that in our daily lives. Think about, there's 12, 15 people here. Think about how many people that you see throughout the day personally. Now multiply that by 15 roughly. And think of, then just imagine the spread and the reach that we could have if we all just did that once. And then kind of rolled along. I said it would spread out like ripples of water, a drop of water, and it kind of ripples out on a lake where it's growing and growing and growing. It would be a growing ring of kindness or good acts. So that applies to us at church. We need to go out of our way to warmly greet any and all visitors, because we never know who might come through those doors or why they're coming through those doors. We don't know what they need. The simple act of saying hello and an introduction might be what they need. Like I said, that might make them feel loved, or it might help them to open up a little and just receive the word and the story. Because we might be a blessing to them, or they might be a blessing to us. We don't know. So are we going to preach Christ, or are we going to plant corn? Which are we going to do? Either way, we're planting roots. So one of them we got to get to grow. So that's my story. Amen.